Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well. My name is Tanmay Singh. I'm the co-founder of 𝗴𝗍, a boutique career management firm. We specialize in helping students and aspirants to study abroad and in India at highly ranked institutions. If you wish to study either in India or abroad, please comment below, reach out to us on Instagram, and we would be glad to help you. Today, we would be talking to Krishna Arcot. Krishna received 3 offer letters from 3 different schools based in Europe. One was the Rotterdam School of Management, abbreviated as RSM. It's in the Netherlands. Then she received an offer letter from TIAS Business School, which is again in the Netherlands. From TIAS, she also received the Women in Business Scholarship, which got her 15,500 euros, which is a great amount, to be very frank. And finally, she converted a very wonderful school located in Spain, which is ESADE, ESADE. The school is currently ranked 17th in the world. And Krishna is among the very few Indians who are able to receive an offer letter even after applying in the 4th round of admissions. Congratulations for that, Krishna. Very glad to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time to do it. Could you please introduce yourself to us?
Yes, first of all, hi Tanmay, thanks for having me. Hi everyone who's watching this. So I am Krishna Arcot. I was basically a digital marketing manager and a strategist, and I was consulting with brands across healthcare, fitness, and sports on their digital social media and brand mandates. I have over 6+ years of experience working in digital marketing. I've worked in a digital marketing agency, a multinational corporation in the alcohol industry, Heineken, if you all have heard of the beer, and also as a independent digital consultant. So that's been my experience so far. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. And so you just said that, you had about 6+ years of work experience. Why did you not continue to work? Why did you feel that there is a need for you to pursue an MBA?
Right. So one thing is that I learned a lot working, and I think honestly, getting your hands dirty in the workplace is the best way to sort of figure out where you fit and what you need to do. So my role in the 6 years was more restricted to digital. And while digital is a great platform to experiment on, to understand audiences much more in depth, I wanted to increase my career scope to brand management and own the entirety of the brand and business versus just the digital mandate. That is, have marketing, key brand assets, tie into sales and attribution. This would require having conversations and building holistic strategy with trade marketing teams, supply chain, manufacturing, finance, and sales. So these are the kind of conversations and the acumen that I wanted to build. So I was hired in various organizations, and I grew within those organizations and found myself shoulder to shoulder with other MBAs and marketing managers. Wow. I could rely on my creative thinking, and I would like to say inherent analytical skills and my understanding of brand on digital. But again, in pursuit of being an effective brand manager and marketer, I wanted a deeper understanding of other business verticals. And I just felt that such work experience was missing from my career for obvious reasons, because beyond a certain point, there are, ceilings with regards to your qualifications. And so that's one major part of it. To cap it off, I would say I wanted to hone my leadership and management skills to be able to lead functions that I'm part of, because that's something I enjoy doing. Yeah. And based on my conversations with various university alumni, working professionals in similar career paths, incredible mentors I've had, like Tanmay, of course, who I met a little later in my journey, but also, senior managers and category heads that I had worked with and had the privilege of being mentored by. I sort of felt very, very confident about doing an MBA. So, right. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. I think in yours, so when we worked together, I felt like you have very clear and solid reasons of pursuing an MBA, which I think was the basis. It actually provided a very strong foundation for your entire application, and that ultimately worked in your favor. That's wonderful. Now, since we were just talking about me and your other mentors as well, what were your top 3 reasons for working with me, aka Tanmay Singh, to be your mentor for your MBA applications?
So I think for me to start off with, I had heard about you from LinkedIn. I mean, there are various other groups, including Quora, that had mentioned a few consultants. And of course, I did a little bit of profile research, and you were available to connect with on, I think it was TopMate or one of these networking apps. So I think that the initial reason number one would be the first conversation I had with you, Tanmay, was I just felt you had left enough room for me to really present myself versus being very oriented towards how do you make the best of it for the application. You took a step back to understand who I am, which I think added a lot of depth to my application so that I could map out my goals more clearly based on who I am. So that's reason number one, just a good understanding of the candidate. The second would be, I think, again, narrowing down on what my spike factor or what my unique offering could be, and how to really sort of ensure that that fits into the B school, because different B schools have different mission statements. And so it's important for you to, I mean, if you're being genuine about your application to the school, you need to communicate why they need you as much as you need them. And I would say the third reason, which is really important in a mentor, would be just an openness, patience, and involvement in every conversation, and the availability around the clock, quite frankly, because with, whether you're freelancing or you have a full-time job, often you don't have all of the time in the world to work on your apps. So it becomes important for you to be able to clarify things on the fly. So that was another very important factor that, cemented my choice.
All right.
To work with you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
And there is something that I always say to everyone who works with me once they receive their offer letter, once they go to their country of choice, that I'm very grateful that you decided to work with me. Because as you said in the very first point, you would have gone to anyone else, but you choose to work with me. And I would forever be grateful for that. I mean, I'm still in touch with people who I worked with almost 9 years ago in 2015. And many of them are in the US, they're working in California and Arizona. And I'm still in touch with them. And I think one of the things that I specifically to that batch of students that I say is that I'm very glad that, quote unquote, you took a chance on me. Everyone starts from somewhere. I mean, I'm pretty sure you had a first job, right? And that particular employer took a chance on you. And I'm always very grateful for people who take a chance on me, because it's virtually impossible for just one admissions coach to work on all schools possible, right? And that's exactly where in fact, I always say to my students as well, whenever I do the discovery call with them, that it's important for you as my potential student, to understand that I understand the way business schools work. I understand the way admission process works. And I think because I have that understanding for both MS programs and MBA programs, I'm able to essentially use that understanding in any school and also help students to apply to schools where I have not helped my previous batches. So I think this is exactly partly, as I said, why I am very grateful to everyone who decides to work with me. So thank you so much for that once again, Krishna. Now, moving from here, since we're talking about studying abroad, what top 3 tips would you want to share with an aspirant who is currently working on the study abroad application?
Okay, so I would say to begin with, do a good amount of research, because a lot of people have a lot of opinions. I'm case in point example of someone who got into the 17th best school in the world and decided to go to, again, a top 100 school, but that's ranked in the 80s or 90s, because it's very important to figure out, one, the investment you're willing to make, 2, what you're looking to get out of the course, and 3, what your goals in life is going to look like after the course. And you should be 100% comfortable and confident to make the choice that you want to make, not to be swayed by, what other people say, if they're not really, really sort of invested in you and helping you think. And even Tanmay, for that matter, there were certain decisions that I tried to have you help me make, but I think ultimately at every point, it's you just sort of said it has to be your decision completely. Even though that you need good sounding board, the decision has to be honest. So I'm really happy that happened, and that couldn't have happened without a good amount of understanding and research, which can either come from reliable blogs online or alumni or even current students. And I guess people even in the Faith Career Network who've had some sort of experience or done their own research, because there's no harm in asking people for their research or getting secondhand research as well. But one would be research. The second would be, again, like I said in my first point, actually, because I think they're both interchangeable, is what the trade-off is, what your risk appetite is, what your goals are. You could be going to your B school when you're 25, 30, 35, 40, 60. It really depends on how much you're willing to spend and the kind of network you want to be exposed to, the kind of classroom you're part of, the economy you want to contribute to. So you've got to personalize even the decision-making process massively and not get lost along the way by, just rankings or what you think people might feel about you if you go somewhere. And I think this is a point that can be glossed over, because in B school, it's very much about selling yourself in the best light. But in that process, don't lose yourself to these shiny sort of offers that come your way when it doesn't sit right with you. And then I would say point 3 would be stay agile and open to change, which is more of like a life way of being, because that just helps. And again, you can get your admission results, you can get off the wait list. I think I may not have come to Europe if I was off the wait list of a particular school I was aiming for. But the point is that, plans change. And now when I think about it, I'm grateful to God that it happened like that, because, it's, you got to just know that you do your best and you put all of it on the table, and then things can happen. So just be open to anything happening and don't get too carried away by good news or bad news, because it can just come every day and it doesn't matter after a point. You got to just stay steady and keep doing your thing. So those would be,
that's good. That's very good. I feel like a lot of things in life are unpredictable, so to say. Like, we can always try our best to make plans and do the best that we can, but some things are always, not under our control. And I guess in a way, that's also the beauty of life, isn't it?
Right? It is.
Now, since we were talking about, you selected school, in this case, TIAS, right? Which is, of course, needless to say, ranked in the top 100 schools in the world. I would want to kind of progress in that direction. How were you able to prepare for your interview, for your TIAS MBA interview? Because I remember we worked on the very extensive application for TIAS, and then you ultimately received the interview invite, perhaps in January this year, if I'm not wrong, and then you were interviewed by Eric Doom. So how did you prepare for the interview? Were there certain steps that you took to prepare yourself?
So to begin with, I think this is something that I've already glossed over in the earlier part, but you have to do your research on the school and what their goals and missions are. Again, this is not some superficial thing, because what I realized is initially, while my approach to it was also make sure you get like the mission statement, the buzzwords, etc. What's important is when you really sort of introspect and think about why those aspects are interesting to you or compelling to you or are going to help you with your goals. Because then the conversation is a lot less of a practice and it's more of a conversation. So I think that that's really important. And I don't think interviewers are intending to be mean. And if they are trying to be mean and put you off guard, then maybe it could be a litmus test for you about the school. But again, all these are personal things. Some of us like tougher interviews, and that's great. So a lot of research on the course, the kind of companies, that students typically end up working at, or, even the geography and their working style and whether that makes sense for you. Because communicating that you have an understanding of that particular market is very important, versus it just being, oh, I want to go somewhere and I want to have a fun year. So that's super important. And then I would say after that, one important factor is a plan B, because, sometimes you don't get exactly what you want, and it's important that you communicate at least that you've thought through a couple of other outcomes. That doesn't necessarily mean you're actually aiming for those outcomes, but it just communicates a sense of thoroughness and a sense of, that you're coming in prepared and you don't have like some sort of, unicorn in your brain that may not ever appear. So that's another important thing. And I think they like to know that you're being very realistic with your expectations, because that also shows a sense of then you're willing to work hard in the system to make things work for you.
Yeah.
So that would be 2. And 3, probably getting to know yourself properly and communicating who you are, obviously based on what they want to hear, but also what's true to yourself. Because funnily enough, as much as I think I knew myself, being able to communicate who I am in a cogent and clear way was a challenge, because I had all of my life, and there are huge markers that I have on my own personality and character, which may not A, be relevant, or B, be something that other people experience.
Yeah.
So it's an important thing to either have conversations with people you're close to who know you well, who won't judge, have a conversation with your mentor. The entire exercise of writing essays, as much as you may get some guidance on what could help with your narrative tone or the points that you focus on, it all has to come from you. And working with Tanmay, there's no spoon feeding. It's an exploratory exercise. And that's way more important, because when you're getting into B school, you should ideally, to a large extent, know who you are. Your strengths, your weaknesses, etc. And it's a big cliche, but it helps a lot, because then the interview honestly becomes a breeze. So, yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. And I'm very glad. Thank you for saying about my coaching style. It is indeed exploratory. I'm here to support and help my students, but I also challenge them. Because if I don't challenge them at this stage of their career, I don't think they would feel adequately prepared for the next phase of their life, which they're essentially heading towards, which is a master's, the MIM, MSTM, MBA, whatever it is, right? So that's exactly why I have adopted the exploratory coaching style, because I always give ample amount of space to the individual to think. Because I realize that if I don't do that, then the person would just be confined to a pigeon, they would essentially be pigeonholed to some extent, right? They would be confined to a box and not be able to think and talk to yourself. I think part of the reason why I do what I do is because, of course, I absolutely am driven to help other individuals in the study abroad process, because I did this several years ago. And also because I'm very grateful that I get to work with absolutely talented and hardworking individuals, such as you, Krishna, in this case. And that gives me another perspective about the life that I have not lived, right? For example, I don't think I had the courage to go to another country at the tender age of probably 22 or something and pursue an internship there. You did. You did that, right? And that requires a lot of focus. And I think I felt inspired when I first got to know that point about you. And I think this is exactly why I give my students the space to think, because that internship part, because internships are usually not very long, so that internship part have very easily been hidden, or it would have been essentially, kind of settled down in your profile, and other things would have come up. But you choose not to. You choose to tell me that, okay, Tanmay, I have done this as well, right? And I, to a very large, not a very large, but to a significant extent, it helped your case, because the moment you talked about that, you were able to demonstrate 2 things. The first, your courage, very important, and these schools look for that courage, because not everyone has the courage to make that switch, which you did, right? And secondly, that you have international exposure. You could have done a similar internship in India, but you choose not to. Right. So that actually gave you international exposure as well, which ultimately helped you open up your mind towards, towards the prospect of studying abroad. So that's wonderful, right? Now, having said this, how was your interview with Dr. Eric Dooms, who, by the way, is a strategy professor at TIAS, and I'm pretty sure you're soon going to take his classes as well. How was your interview with him? Do you remember some questions that he asked? Like, were they simple questions, general questions? Was there anything that kind of stood out to you?
So I think the main point that I would like to make is that it was very much a conversation. He's a great person to kind of, he guided the conversation in a really good direction, because I was able to, I guess, communicate a lot more outside of like structured answers, including my points of view on global affairs and things like that. Again, doesn't mean you go and read up a bunch of publications and mug up facts. It's genuinely about the things that you're interested in that are going on in the world, because those things influence geopolitics, influences markets, influences business. So it's more of just a way of saying, okay, I'm alert and open to everything that's going on because I know that everything sort of is linked. So I think that was a large part of our conversation. It was very interesting. It went very naturally. But then, of course, I think 30 minutes into chatting, we had to ask, there had to be more specific questions about my background, etc. But if I remember correctly, I think one was, of course, introducing myself and kind of going over my journey and what got me to where I am. And then apart from that, I would say my MBA goals, the work that I had done in social impact, because I've done some volunteering work through my career as well. So what was the work I did and how did that impact me and how has that impacted what I want to do? In addition to that, of course, there's a general question where they can ask you what other schools you've applied to. And be honest, don't be too honest, because the point is you got to definitely talk about the fact that, I mean, when you apply to a school, it costs money, it takes effort, there is high intent. So the idea is be as honest, but they're not fools. They also know that we have to have front up and backup plans. So that's one question. And then your strengths and weaknesses and how it sort of manifests at a personal and group level. And then it ends with whether you have questions for the interviewer. And yeah, I think that was pretty much, And I think the interview was a total of about maybe 25 to 30 minutes, 35 minutes or so.
Yeah, which is the typical length of an MBA interview, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you think you were able to perform in the interview with Dr. Dooms? Like, do you think it went well? Do you think something helped you? Do you think it could have been better? What happened? What do you feel about that?
To be honest, I think it went great. I don't think it could have, anything can go better or worse, objectively speaking. But I think for me, it was probably what I felt was like among my top 2 interviews in terms of just how I was able to present myself. And I would say credit to the interviewer because it was a really good conversation and he's a really interesting person to talk to as well. But it ended on a very positive note. And I think that experience honestly massively influenced my decision to go to TIAS. Because that's the touch point for you also to interact with them aside from, talking to admissions teams and alums. And I think that leaves a huge impression. That's important to me. So that swayed my decision, I would say.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Also, because in some cases I've seen over the years that there are some interviewers, not many, but like only some interviewers who interview you only for the sake of interviewing. Maybe they don't have any intent of recruiting you as a student, or they are just there to fulfill their duty. But I guess from what you have told me, it makes a lot of sense that Dr. Dooms was very invested in that conversation with you, which makes sense because you mentioned that, there was a part when you were talking about different worldly affairs, and then the conversation eventually shifted to more MBA, quote unquote, MBA-like questions, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. Now, so with that done, how was Tanmay's mentorship important while working on your TIAS MBA application, and of course other applications as well, because you received offer letters from RSM and ESADE as well? How was my mentorship important while working on those applications?
I would say to start off with kind of structuring your process, your thoughts. I mean, that's something that we're all capable of doing. And ideally, if you're applying to, I'm speaking for B school, of course, you could be applying for an MSc, an MIM, etc.
Yeah.
Every course has a certain rigor, a certain thing that they're testing in you. And so I think that's something we should inherently have. When you're applying to different schools, when there's 100 different things to kind of keep in mind, you don't want to dilute your application in any way. And also sometimes you may have a time constraint. Like for me, with ESADE, I applied in round 4. And so the point is that, these things, sometimes when you have somebody who's very experienced, has seen 100 different versions of things, different students, etc., you're able to kind of narrow down, structure, and extract what's really necessary to be on the table, after which then you have like an entire clean slate and then you can start building. So I think that structuring was, it was really helpful that Tanmay was there, that he was there to kind of, help me slot my thoughts and really create my narrative. And again, I think the journey of kind of writing about yourself, etc., can be a bit harrowing because you have to keep whatever. So it helps to have a sounding board along the way, especially when you're feeling underconfident about playing up a particular strength, which again, it's about also getting your foot in the door. So sometimes you need that sounding board on a very regular level to just say, okay, cool, I feel okay talking about myself like this. For me, that was a personal thing that I struggled with a bit. So it really helped to have that sort of unbiased sounding board, so to speak.
Right. Got it. Makes sense. And, as I said at the very beginning of this conversation, you received a massive scholarship of 15.5 thousand euros. Congratulations for that once again, Krishna. Were there certain steps that you took to back that scholarship? Anything that you did to get it?
So I think, of course, they have a scholarship essay. I mean, different universities have different formats in the way that they present it. Like Rotterdam has again a different way of addressing scholarships versus TIAS, which makes it open to everyone at the get-go. So there's certain criteria that you need to fit into. But when you go for like the excellence or merit-based scholarship, so to speak, you have to have demonstrated work or contributions that you've made or impact that you've made. So I think for me, what was really important is I just felt if I'm going to be writing a women in business essay, I'm going to really dig deep into all of my experience and all of the impact I've made or received in the space of, women or the female force at work. And again, it's not some huge empowerment saga, because I think a lot of us do have a good amount of opportunity and a seat at the table, but it's also about how forward thinking you are and how much you want to do for the industry that you're joining or the sector that you're joining in the future and how you plan to give back. So I think the essay I spent a pretty solid amount of time on. Tanmay also spent a solid amount of time helping me improve it, because again, sometimes you start off with, am I going to have anything? And then at the end, sometimes you have too much and nothing is really, it's not coming out as a cohesive story. But I think spend a lot of time with that, because getting a scholarship is really incredible, regardless of whether you can afford it or not. For grad school, I believe that scholarship is a must, because so it helps with a lot of things. I think that was important, and tying it into your conversation in the interview, even if it doesn't come up, is a good tip that Tanmay had told me. And I honestly, it happened quite naturally. I didn't have to think about it too much. But again, sometimes that's credit to the interviewer. If they give you enough space to delve into all aspects of your life and your goals and your passion, sometimes you don't get that space. So you need to kind of create that space and pitch yourself based on the scholarship you're applying to. So I think that kind of came together for me with this school.
That's very good. Yeah, that's very good. I think, I'll just quickly add to a point which you mentioned, which was that in a lot of cases, and even when you would go out in the job market, the fact that you are a women in business scholarship recipient is going to signal to the employer's market that you have it in you to get a scholarship. Not everyone is able to get a scholarship for grad school that way, right? It is good to have, but not everyone is able to get that. And that's exactly why, it's always my intent to get all of my students a scholarship, but as is the nature of things, they get offer letters, of course, but they are not everyone is able to get a scholarship, right? And I think the fact that you got, it's very competitive, of course. The fact that you got the Women in Business Scholarship is also essentially signaling to your future employers that you are a woman who is very oriented towards, towards management and business, right? You are someone who has done it in the past, which means pre-MBA, and you would very efficiently do the same even after your MBA. And you have been rewarded for this for your previous efforts during the MBA. So I think this is how the employer's market is going to perceive the fact that you received a certain amount of money, which by the way is huge. 15.5 thousand euros is a lot of money, right? And for your MBA program. So that's absolutely wonderful. Now, we're just going to quickly conclude this conversation with the final question, which is that what are your do's and don'ts for study abroad aspirants? What would you say they definitely do, and certain things that they should avoid doing?
So I think there are many do's that you can take from the previous things that I've said, but broadly, I would say one is extensive research. Two would be talk to people. I think that's part of the research thing, actually, but just have a lot of real conversations about what life is post MBA and try and equip yourself with as much information about your industry, your university, the culture, like everything. Right? Because that just helps you be informed and you can have more spontaneous conversations and actually learn from people like interviewers, etc. Like it's just not like a take, but there's a give and take there as well. And I would say third, budgeting, because money, according to me, and
True.
love and happiness makes the world go round, but money is important. So you need to do a lot of budgeting. And when you also are very clear on your budgeting and your, investments versus the amount you're spending, you're also able to make much, much bigger decisions for yourself. So those are three top operational oriented things. All the introspection, etc., comes with the mentorship. I would say don't go only by what others say, because everyone has varied experiences. So it's better to, like for me, for example, in India, I got waitlisted in one school and I got into the other school. And while I knew I had kind of made a decision about not, of kind of considering my Europe choices after that, because I really wanted to get into the school I was waitlisted at. I sort of went to visit the school I got into, and it was lovely. And even if I wasn't going to go there, I just felt better about the decision. So I think experiencing things for yourself, if it's again financially and logistically possible, is the best thing in any way. When you're making a decision. So I would say, don't go by what others say, experience it for yourself. Second would be, don't get swayed by big brands and rankings alone, because it's important, but what's important to you? And ultimately, this is grad school. There's a whole bunch of other factors you need to consider, including where you are at your life, etc. So that's the second thing. And then the third, I would say, is don't be disillusioned or don't have preconceived notions about how life in a different country is going to be. Be very, very real about it. Be very real about what you want. Don't just feel like, oh, I want to go to a particular place because things seem a certain way. Be very real about, the lifestyle, the people, the way of living, etc. Because it's a big decision and you don't want to be stuck in a position after and regret. So these are just ways of just being very honest with yourself. So yeah.
Okay.
These would be my top.
Yeah. Actually, your don'ts are wonderful, because in a lot of cases, people do tend to get swayed away only by rankings. And I absolutely clearly remember the time when you and I were having, the conversation about where to ultimately go. And I remember telling you what you said in this conversation as well, that Tanmay does not give you a definite answer. He gives you the room to think, and also ensures that he's talking you through both pros and cons, right? And I think we did that for TIAS and ESADE as well. I remember telling you that and I say it all the time to my current students as well, and I've said the same to people who came before you, that what would ultimately matter is what you do during your MBA and not necessarily where you do your MBA from. If you are going to a very well-renowned school and you're not as invested and motivated to pursue that program there, then it would still get you a few interview invites after you finish the degree, because you have the brand name, of course, on your resume, but you might not be able to get the kind of job that you're looking for. So you need to have that motivation regardless of where you go, which is exactly why I consistently say this to everyone. What matters way more is what you do during your MBA instead of where you do it from. Of course, brand names and all, like, of course, I would not compare Stanford with, let's say, a tier 3 school located in Belgium, right? I would rather say that if you are going to a Belgian school, or if let's do an Italian school or a Portuguese school, try to see how is it that you can do your best in that environment, and then get recruited. Because ultimately what matters is if you're able to get the kind of job that you set out to get, that you pursued an entire degree to get, right? Are you able to fulfill your short-term goals, and which again, would be informing what you do in the long term. So as long as you're able to do that, all is good. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for your time once again. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure the viewers that we have here would have taken a lot from your journey and would feel inspired to do their best as well. Any final thoughts?
Thank you for having me. And I think just to anyone watching, be yourself. That's all I would say, because awesome. It helps you live an honest life.
Yeah. And that's very, very important. Like I have experienced situations where people were not honest, and that has not led to favorable outcomes. And so I think if you have lived an honest life, I mean, needless to say, in the BCL applications, most people tweak a little bit here and there, and that's understandable. But I think apart from that, and in general as well, one should do their best to lead an honest life as much as they can. Great. Yeah. Well, you have a wonderful day ahead, Krishna, and I hope
Thank you.
You're welcome, and I hope that you enjoy your time during your MBA and after that.
Yes, thanks. Me too. Thank you, Tanmay. Take care.